So, I just decided to make this video today because I had something that scared the living crap out of me happen with Paco. And I don't know how many of you folks use these collars. I'm very fond of them. They're pretty good. But there's something you got to be very careful about. And what I'm talking about is I use, when I walk the dogs, I use a harness. Although it's hard because we've got 3 different sizes now, and when they're puppies, they grow through them like nothing. But I have a big one for Harley, and then a medium-sized one for Sam, and a smaller one for Paco. And unfortunately, what I have to do when I take them in the front yard, even, is to keep them on a long leash, a long a cotton duck leash. It's a training leash because I don't have really a fence. I have a hedge, and although Sam, I don't need to put her on a leash because if I tell her sit, she will sit. She doesn't care if the world ends. She won't move. But the other two, they're kind of obedient unless some other dog comes along or some people, and it's like, especially now that they don't see people that often, they just go nuts. So I have to get control of them. So I used to use a regular collar, but they'll go running and they'll tug, and then you can't pull them back, and they'll get it rolled up in the, and they just won't, when they get too excited and they start getting towards the street, plus when people are walking on the sidewalk, they want to go through the hedges and say hello to people because they're harmless. But of course, people don't know that. I wouldn't want to be walking on the street and see dogs coming up to me, and I was like, hi. So, I mean, you got a couple options. When Sam was younger and she was hard to control, I would use, occasionally I would use the choke chain, right, to walk her, to teach her not to pull, right? Problem with this is, and this is a chain one, and it slips rather easily. I use a choke chain. Frankly, I prefer the chain because you can see it slips forward and back easily. The problem with this is it chokes. If you pull, it gets smaller, and you let go, it gets bigger again, right? But it doesn't stop. The more they pull, the more it tightens, right? So I wasn't a big fan of that. So somebody told me about these Martingale collars, and these things are interesting. If you look, this is a collar, right? Here's a collar, right? And it looks like just like a regular collar, except it's actually 2 pieces with a loop where the leash attaches. And what that does is it's a certain diameter, but if they pull, it narrows the diameter to a point and will stop. It won't choke them, infinitely. It'll come to this point and stop. And then if they let go, it goes back to normal size, right? So I like that. And I use this now. This is what I use now. I bought the hardware and I made it. And this is what I use for Paco. And I have a bigger one for Harley. Now, I plan on taking this apart again and sewing it now that I have my little sewing machine. And lining it with fleece. I can line it with fleece so it's not as rough. Because this is polypropylene webbing. It's tough, but it's rough. Right? I mean, it's not a chain, and they can take it. They've got good fur, but it's nice, It's nicer, especially Harley gets to play. They get to playing outside, and they run and they'll yank on this thing. So the problem comes in with having the right size. I don't have this problem with Harley because God knows his freaking collar is miles above his feet because he's huge, right? Problem is this one for Paco. He's walking around, right? His little Paco with his tiny little legs, and he's walking around on a long leash, which isn't like this because it's long. It's 30 feet long, and he's walking around the yard. And then occasionally what will happen is because he's not very bright and distracted by doing all the things he does, this will be dragging, and he'll put his forepaw through here, and this will go all the way up to his shoulder, and then he can't get it out, and he's choking. He's got his paw through here and his neck, right? And I see him lying on the ground there like, what's going on? I'm not Houdini. You know, what is this? And I have to go there and literally very carefully pull his paw out of this loop, right? So that he's fine. And that scared the crap out of me because he looked like he was choking himself. So what I've started to do now is I take a Velcro strap and I put it through the loop and I hook it. And this is only for Paco because the leash is actually a little bit big for him. It's adjustable and it's adjusted all the way down, but it's kind of a little bit bigger than he needs, and he's so low to the ground. So what I do is I use this hook and loop strap and I close the loop so the loop can't open. So the whole function of the entire function of the choking part of the collar doesn't actually work, but that's fine, because what it does is, if I pull this so that it's in the center, he can't get his feet through there and he can't hurt himself. So I just thought I'd make this video because if you're using one of these collars with a smaller dog, you got to make sure it's sized right, because especially they never have collars on. Unless they're outside, they don't wear collars. But if you're one of these people that leaves a collar on the dog all the time and you leave one of these on him, and what happens to Paco happens to your dog, he could strangle himself before you even have a chance to know. So just wanted to let you know. I love these collars. They're very good. I plan to line them both with fleece. I plan to make one for Sam. But if they're not the right size, be aware. There is that danger. I hate to have somebody lose a pet. So there you go.